Hey guys, I'm out in the boat here and I just want to show you guys how I cast the Mustang from Livingston Lures. So this one here has actually caught a few fish for us. It's actually a little bit beat up, missing the eyes, but that's just part of having a bait. This is the stock hooks on there. The ones I show you guys in the shop, I've actually changed out some hooks on one of the other ones, but this is stock exactly how they come with 3/0 VMC hooks. And most cases, I'm just gonna do a cast out and just a straight medium speed retrieve, just like that. You just want to keep it down a foot or two under the surface, straight retrieve. And then when you get close to the boat, you want to go into just your conventional figure 8. And the beauty of this bait is that it figure 8's really nice. It stays upright. It doesn't roll completely on its side in the turns. And the other way that I like to use it, if we're in a situation where it might be a little bit deeper or the weeds are deeper, I do just a slight pull. Not really pull, pause, but just pull into it and just let it kind of move down a bit. And it'll just have that little bit of nose down attitude with some tail kick. And it looks really good under the water doing that. And we've actually triggered for sure one fish doing that. Right now I'm casting over some weeds, so I just got to be a little bit more aggressive with my pulls and my pops in there. But as you'll see in the underwater footage, when you do that pull, reel into it, it just gives it such a really cool nose drop and tail kick, and it really looks good. I did pick up a little bit of weeds there, and that's what you get when you're into the weeds, but that is how I use the Mustang from Livingston Lures. All right, guys, I am here with Stephen Paul of Livingston Lures, and he was the man behind the new for this year, what's actually supposed to be for 2026, but they did a bit of an early drop on the Livingston Mustang. And I actually got a hold of this one right here, which is the Swamp Thing color.
Swamp
Early this
Thang.
Swamp Thang. Yeah, you got to
Thang.
drag out
You
the
got to
thang.
get Southern on it, baby. Thang.
So I did get some early access to that when Steven was up in July, and I fished with him and Herbie, which is a whole nother story, which we'll get into on another podcast, because I think that was one hell of a night. But I wanted to get you on here, Steven, to talk about the new for this year going into next year, this little wee swim bait called the Mustang. And everybody that's had it in their boat is catching on it. And
Yeah.
I know that it's been real popular now that it's been in the Musky shop and at a few of the other spots. So welcome to 54
Yeah.
Bust, and give us your thoughts on what it was you were trying to do with this little swim bait.
It's one of these things of if we all need tools in the boat, right? And I, of course, I throw everybody else's lures. I'm happy to throw other brands, and I just felt like a lot of the swim baits were lacking as far as punch. The Mustang's kind of a smaller package overall, so about 7.5. And what I wanted was a small swim bait that had a oversized paddle tail, because what was I found difficult, and Glenn, you're a guide, I'm a guide. There are days that you've got to have a bait where somebody can throw it out, turn the handle, fish on in, right? And swim baits kind of fit that bill. But what I was looking for is something that was undersized with a lot of punch, where whether it be the spring, whether it be winter, anytime I felt confident in throwing that bait. Where you talked about, and you've thrown at the Magnus, we have the big 10-inch version, but the Mustang was just meant to just kind of be a catch-all fish, or catch-all for all kinds of fishing. I had to take consideration as well the European market. Actually met one of the big fans of 54 Bust over there in Belgium here recently, and that was kind of neat. It's freaky. I'm waiting to pick this guy up. He's walking into the thing, and I see a giant 54 Bust hoodie in the middle of Belgium. And so Glenn's definitely doing some good stuff. So there's people watching this stuff for sure. But I wanted something that crossed over. And so a bait that I felt confident that it was big enough and pronounced enough for European pike, but had that aggressive paddle for muskies, because a lot of times you'll have a smaller swim bait, but it has a very understated tail. And the key in swim baits is the pitch angle of the tail. And to the uninformed, or if you haven't really paid attention to it, the angle of the tail really influences the body roll and the overall action. And like everybody's throwing like a sassy shad that you'll throw for bass or walleye. They're old school sassy shad, and it has this rear tail that's pitched at an angle. That's a far more subtle presentation. Where with the Mustang, this is a straight 90, very aggressive presentation with a bigger paddle. So I just want small package was a lot of punch that was going to work from season opener to season close for anglers of all skill level.
That makes total sense. And yeah, when you hold it up, it definitely feels like a smaller size swim bait, but that tail does feel almost too big
Yeah,
for the bait.
yeah.
And as the people seen at the intro of this in the underwater footage, it's got that really pronounced belly roll and that tail's got a lot of kick, but it doesn't roll out. And
Mhm.
it has these two little fins on the
I
side.
know. Yeah,
Was Do they help with that, keeping
that's
that body from rolling out, or what was the purpose of these 2 fins on the
they're they're
side?
they're not aesthetic. Um, that was a lot of time spent on trying to get that roll because you always want a pronounced head roll with a swim bait. And there, when the body will roll, let me do it this way so you can see. When the body pitches or goes either way, at a certain point that fin will dig in, right? And so it creates a point where it can only roll so much, and then the action has to come back this way. So that's how I'm able to get such a pronounced roll in comparison to other swim baits, where other swim baits will have this, but this is rolling. And a lot of that is created because you have such a small swim bait and such a amount of drag here in the rear of the bait, right? And
Mhm.
so you're always kind of in bait design, you're always looking at not to sound palm hydrodynamics or something of that nature. You're just looking at what is what is the vector of force here and what is happening elsewhere that creates that roll. Same thing with wonder. You look at like Duff's baits at Supernatural. It's like he can make it walk far further, but at a certain point it'll flip over. So you have to counterbalance that. And I think I found like the sweet spot for really exaggerated head roll with it still catching without, like you said, laying over. And the big thing on the musky front, which is what you and I care about, is figure eighting. And I always felt like a lot of swim baits were a little bit anemic in the figure eight, where the bait's getting on its side, it looks unnatural. I really couldn't keep it in a fast figure eight, or if I want to bring it up and hang it in the corner. So I spent a tremendous amount of time kind of dialing in the actually shaping the side profile as well to get pronounced belly roll, but it's going to corner well. And I think that's so important that the bait's going to corner and it's not going to roll out in the figure eight, much less on the straight retrieve.
Yeah, and I think again that makes sense. I know for me, having early access to the Swamp Thang color, um, getting it in the hands of some less experienced
Yeah.
anglers, it was exactly what you said. Cast it out, just turn the handle, bring it in, and we've caught fish up to 45 inches on this 45-inch tiger. Caught a bunch of fish, moved a bunch of fish, and even though I've only had it a short period of time, already finding situations where it's like, yeah, I would reach for this small little bait because I do think it kind of punches above its size.
Yeah.
One
That's the
thing,
whole, yeah,
yeah, one thing I
the
do
whole
want to
point.
just, yeah, show is here is the Magnus, and then there's the Mustang. I know it's hard to see on my
Yeah. And everything's
camera
kind of
there.
backwards if
Yeah,
you notice.
but certainly a lot smaller bait, and it's not meant to be the same bait. I mean, that's the whole point. Um, this one here, you'll see I actually changed the hooks out. I believe these are 3/0 owners on here.
Mhm.
I've had to cut hooks, which is a good thing, and I actually sent Steven a post the other day. I left one of these with my buddies up at Cedar, and the next morning they text me and they're like, "Cutting hooks is okay." It comes standard with, I believe these are VMC 3/0s.
VMC, as far as
I
I got a
believe they're th
box.
yeah, I believe they're
Yeah.
3/0s. They do look a little bit small by musky standards, but I will say that we've already put a bunch of fish in the boat on
Yeah.
these, and again, it's a situational bait. You're not gonna throw this at the biggest fish in the lake if you're on that spot, but that being said, we have moved a ton of pretty big fish with a small bait, and one thing I did wanna ask you, Steven, is there's this push in the muskie industry, especially with
Uh-huh.
bucktails. downsize, downsize. Everybody's going to like that 7/8 or that single 8, single 7. We're seeing a lot of smaller bucktails, and you don't really hear much of that, that classic double 10. Is this a case of something like that as well, where it's like, hey, let's try and like you said, put a big punch in a smaller package?
That was you nailed the thought process. Downsizing seems to be the ticket a little bit. So a little bit of the driver behind that, and then again, a little bit easier on the shoulder. It for me, it seems like a really easy bait if I'm going to throw all day long. If I'm going to throw one bait all day long, this is just like throwing nothing.
Yeah. As we kind of wrap up this look at the Mustang, guys are going to ask, what's kind of your preferred gear to throw with this? And not really talking rods and reels, but
Right.
leader. Where would you go with a leader for a little swim bait like this?
So all of my actually I've got them hanging here. Let's see, 80. All of my baits are designed around the 18-inch Musky shop, 130-pound fluoro leader. Right. Obviously working with them, have access to that leader, and it's kind of like the baseline leader. Sometimes when I'm fishing, let's say like a crack, and I'm fishing a specified leader, but anytime I'm designing something, I just want to go with that leader that pretty much everyone has. You know what I'm saying? That is
Yeah.
kind of like the foundational leader. I've not seen any real influence. If say a guy went to a 150, or they went to 150-pound fluoro, or they went to a straight steel leader, not that much of a pronounced difference. Given my druthers, I'm going to fish something flexible. So multi-strand wire or 130, 150 fluoro, I think is going to be fun because of the pronounced action of the bait. You're really not going to notice. Again, it's so overly pronounced that leader material has little effect on that action. So kind of baseline. Like I said, anytime I'm designing something, trying to keep it really baseline so you're not worried about your leader combination so much affecting the action overall.
Okay, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
One last question I want to ask you as we look ahead to next year. I know these were going to be kind of released in 2026, and you guys are already cooking up some new stuff. As we look ahead, I personally, I was already thinking that this is the perfect design for something that's a little bit bigger. And I think you can kind of give us an insight on where you guys are going with that for next year. What's the
Yeah.
thought process on a bigger Mustang?
So it's coming. Kind of like we have our little project folders at Livingston, and when we're going to production and the mold making. So it's the Mustang GTO. I don't know if we can use that name yet, but that's kind of the working title right now. So the goal is to have, because the kind of the universe of swim baits at Livingston that we've created. So we have the Magnus at 10 inches, right? And then if you downsize the Magnus, you have an 8-inch panfish profile. So we'll have, it's 7.5, but we'll have a 7 and a 9.5, right? And so you're going to have those two different profiles, which you will have the rounded Mustang 9.5. And basically, if you take one of these and you just scale it up to 9.5, that's what you're going to get. We're working on the dynamics of the fin to, just different weighting and a few little tweaks you got to make to get the same performance. And so that would kind of be like the Livingston Lures ecosystem of swim baits, where you have 10, 9, 7, 8, and you pretty much cover for musky pike pretty much anywhere you go there. I'm really excited about the Mustang. To be honest with you, it's like the Magnus, like I said, big, aggressive, the versatile weighting and things of that nature. I'm looking more of a fall thing. I really want that 9.5 for those peak summer bites where I'm just burning it over weeds and things of that nature, trying to trigger some of those bigger fish, especially like I said, July, August, Loch Sewell, Eagle Lake, Lake of the Woods. I think that bait's going to be phenomenal.
Yeah, I'm already looking forward to getting my hands on that. Well, Stephen, I want to just say thank you for coming on and giving us a little bit of the backstory of the Mustang. And I want to do a few more of the Livingston lures as we kind of go into this off season. We can talk about a few of the lures that I've had some success with, or that I think, are really going to be standouts for us. So I'll have you back on. I'm going to reach out to Herbie because I know one of the ones that I want to talk
Yeah.
about here right away. Herbie had a big hand in. So really looking forward to this. I think that people will enjoy this look at the inside of designing some of these lures,
Absolutely.
because that's always a fun side of it. So, Stephen, thank you so much for this, and we'll have you on here real soon. Stephen Paul from Livingston Lures, guys.
Thank you, Glenn.